Hey everyone, and welcome back to Expose Scandalous Files of the Elite. I am your host, Jim Chapman, and we are in part 2 of Becoming 47, and I'm going to call this The Truth Never Changes. And I'm going to start with a few updates from what we covered in part 1 of this series, which covered the testimony, or lack thereof, of Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle. And if you will recall, Director Cheadle, she was under a lot of fire in this hearing. Pretty much all the committee members were calling for her to resign. Well, in less than 24 hours, on the Tuesday morning following that committee hearing, Cheadle did just that. And here's that article that ran on News Nation. U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle resigned Tuesday amid widespread outrage over her agency's failure to prevent the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump at a Pennsylvania campaign rally. Cheadle's resignation, which was reported by NBC News, came a day after she was blasted by members of the House committee at a hearing on the Secret Service actions leading up to Trump's rally. Cheadle rejected calls at that hearing to resign, saying she was the best qualified person to head the Secret Service, which is responsible for protecting the vice president, the president, their family members, and leading presidential candidates. The director angered members of the House Oversight and Accountability Committee by refusing to answer many questions about the Secret Service's actions surrounding the Trump rally, where Republican presidential nominee narrowly avoided being killed by a 20-year-old gunman named Thomas Crooks. One man died in the shooting while 2 others were critically injured. On Tuesday, in a letter Cheadle wrote to Secret Service staff, she said, "In light of recent events, it is with a heavy heart that I've made the difficult decision to step down as your director. The Secret Service's solemn mission is to protect our nation's leaders and financial infrastructure. On July 13th, we fell short on that mission." That from Cheadle, who served in the agency for nearly 30 years. "The scrutiny over the last week has been intense and will continue to remain as our operational tempo increases," she wrote. "As your director, I take full responsibility for the security lapse." Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas appointed Secret Service Deputy Director Ronald Rowe to serve as the acting director for the agency until a permanent director is selected by President Joe Biden. Biden, in a statement, thanked Cheadle for her decades of public service and said, "As a leader, it takes honor, courage, and incredible integrity to take full responsibility for an organization tasked with one of the most challenging jobs in public service." Trump, in a social media post responding to Cheadle's resignation, wrote, "The Biden-Harris administration did not properly protect me, and I was forced to take a bullet for democracy. It was my great honor to do so." The criticism of Cheadle centers on the Secret Service's failure to secure a roof that Crooks used as a sniper post to shoot Trump and rally attendees, among other lapses. So there's that. She is gone, and deservingly so, in my opinion, and we can move on from her. Now, there's another update, which I did not cover this original rumor in episode 1 because, quite honestly, it was so absurd. I didn't even want to acknowledge it, but there were so many what you would call never Trumpers that had been saying since this happened that Trump was not actually shot, that he was hit by like glass or something. Like, they hate this guy so much. They won't even face what they have seen with their own 2 eyes. It's mind-boggling to me. Actually lying to themselves. A guy's dead, several others are wounded, and to me, you're spitting all over these folks' faces due to your massive, absolute hatred for Trump. If you want to hate the guy, hate him. I don't care. I don't care who you vote for. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. It's none of your business who I'm voting for. But the bottom line is to say that, oh, this guy wasn't actually shot when it was on freaking video and you can see the bullet in midair. You can see the displacement of air where they have pictures. It's crazy. you need to question yourself a little bit on that. So this fact, it wasn't lost on even the doctor that worked on Trump. He released his own statement, and this is a bipartisan doctor, and in his statement, he goes into that a little bit, and we'll point it out. But I'm sure he's as disgusted by the false rumors as I am and many other people. So I'm going to read you this statement so we can put this bullshit to bed that he was not shot with a bullet. Okay, this is from Ronnie Jackson, who is the former physician to the president. And he says, as the former physician to the president for President Donald Trump, I have continued to monitor his health and well-being along with his primary care physician. Since the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania on the evening of July 13th, the would-be assassin fired multiple rounds from relatively close range using a high-powered rifle, with one bullet striking the former president and now the Republican nominee for president in his right ear. I have reviewed his medical records from Butler Memorial Hospital, where he was initially evaluated for treatment of a gunshot wound to the right ear. Having served as an emergency medicine physician for over 20 years in the U.S. Navy, including a combat physician on a battlefield in Iraq, I have treated many gunshot wounds. Based on my direct observation of the injury, my relative clinical background, my significant experience evaluating and treating patients with similar wounds, I completely concur with the initial assessment and treatment provided by the doctors and nurses at Butler Memorial Hospital on the day of the shooting. During the congressional hearing 2 days ago, FBI Director Christopher Wray suggested it could be bullet, shrapnel, or glass, and we're going to get on that subject in an upcoming episode, but I got to read this statement in full, so we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but just bear with me. There is absolutely no evidence that this was anything other than a bullet. Congress should correct the record as confirmed by both the hospital and myself. Director Wray is wrong and inappropriate to suggest anything else. As a former White House physician for 14 years who served during 3 presidential administrations and served as the appointed physician for both Obama and President Trump, I fully understand the global significance of this attempt on the life of the former president and current Republican nominee for president. As such, I want to reassure the American people and the rest of the world that President Trump is doing extremely well. He is rapidly recovering from a gunshot wound to his right ear, and I will continue to be available to assist President Trump and his personal physician in any way they see fit, and will provide updates as necessary with the permission of President Trump. Signed, Ronnie L. Jackson, former physician of the president. So stop the bullshit. The dude was shot. There you have it. And I bet you that the Never Trumpers will still say it's bullshit. What a crazy world we are living in. So let's move on to day 2 of this committee hearing, which more information came available, let's say, on this day than the first day, albeit the bar was pretty low. I'm going to play for you some clips of some of the exchanges, and some I'm just going to break down for you and save you nearly the 5 hours of testimony. And we're going to cover some things we found out for the first time and some things that we got confirmation on regarding the investigation. I also want to mention that prior to these hearings, that committee actually toured the site of the shooting in Butler to prepare. Testifying was Pennsylvania State Police Colonel Christopher Paris. And while this guy has absolutely been thrust into the spotlight, many people don't know his background. So I had his bio emailed to me, and here's a little bit about Christopher Paris. So Colonel Christopher L. Paris is a native of Lackawanna County, and he was nominated by Governor Shapiro to lead the Pennsylvania State Police. Colonel Paris enlisted in the Pennsylvania State Police in 1999, beginning his career as a trooper assigned to Troop K. As he progressed through the ranks, he served in Troop K in the Bureau of Training and Education, Troop R, and most recently he served as commander. Commissioner Paris is a 1998 magna cum laude graduate of the University of Scranton, a 2004 graduate of Temple University Law School, and a graduate of the 267th session of the FBI National Academy. He has passed the Pennsylvania and New Jersey bar exams and is an active member of the Pennsylvania Bar. Colonel Paris exercises command, administrative, and fiscal authority over the Pennsylvania State Police, which is the 10th largest police agency in the United States. That was interesting. I didn't know that. Serving a population of more than 3.3 million residents over a 36,000 square mile area. He oversees a budget of more than $1.5 billion and commands a statewide complement of approximately 6,500 enlisted and civilian employees, which includes an authorized complement of 4,841 state police troopers. So that's a little bit on him. Sounds like a qualified guy, right? Now, we're going to get into some of the exchanges between him and the Congressional Committee. And one of those exchanges involved California Congressman Democrat Eric Swalwell. And we were able to get a firm number regarding the number of shots taken at the rally. If you'll remember, last time we talked in episode 1, the Secret Service director couldn't give us that information. Well, he was able to give us that. So he was quoted as saying that Crooks fired 8 shots into the rally before he was neutralized by Secret Service agents. Now, Eric Swalwell asked him directly that question, and he said, "I believe the number is 8. 8 casings have been recovered." He further specified that law enforcement uncovered 8 bullet casings right next to Crooks' body. Because, some people are going to say, well, where were they all by his body? The whole second shooter thing, right? Now, as we told you previously, law enforcement officers, even though the Secret Service director would give us no information, officers prior to that only said it was multiple shots. They wouldn't give us a firm count. So finally, we were able to get a firm count out of him. Now, another question on the mind of many, really since day one, was in regard to the roof of the building where Crooks was shooting from and that slope that supposedly kept officers from placing someone on that roof. Well, Congressman Michael Guest was wondering the same thing, and here's what that exchange sounded like.
On time now, recognize the Vice Chairman of the committee, Mr. Guest, for his 5 minutes. Mr. Guest, for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and gentlemen, thank you for both being here today. You both classified as what happened on July 13th as critical failures. I would expand that and say it was a colossal failure. And I think you have both stated that the ultimate responsibility for what occurred that day falls upon the Secret Service. Colonel Paris, I know that your officers were there in a support role. You were following the operational plan set out by Secret Service. You testified that the primary responsibilities for your officers were motorcade and then the interior perimeter, and that you had 2 roving officers there, really just out there to provide support if necessary and called upon. You mentioned earlier that you went to the scene on the 13th, and thank you for going there and being a part of that. And you also testified earlier that you have not been provided the operational plan by the Secret Service. Is that correct?
That's correct. We haven't received it yet.
When did you request that?
I'd have to go back and check in the earlier part of the investigation. That was just something that we asked for as a matter of course. We were not told no. We just, to date, have yet to receive it.
And that would be important, would it not, if you're going to investigate what happened on that day? The operational plan, that is the starting point for all the events that later transpired. Is that correct?
Well, I don't want to overstate the role of the state police here is to investigate the 3 Pennsylvanians that were shot and the use of force by the Secret Service counter sniper. To the extent that we need to know the sequence of events leading up to that, we obviously would like to know as much as we can, but it's not our role to do an after-action report on the secret.
Well, but all the shootings occurred simultaneously. The same shot that struck President Trump, one of those shots killed one of your fellow citizens, and two others were injured. And so you can't separate the two. This is one investigation into a shooting that occurred in which one of your citizens were killed, two more were fatally injured, in which the president himself was struck. And so the fact that the Secret Service is stonewalling your investigation, that they're not providing you this information. We saw the testimony yesterday from the Secret Service director where she refused to answer questions and has now resigned. I find that to be especially troubling. We have the Secret Service not wanting to cooperate with Congress, not wanting to cooperate with a fellow law enforcement agency, and I personally find that troubling. As we look, and as you are aware from speaking to your officers that were there physically on the scene that day, did Secret Service, did they have any drones in the air so that they could have an eye in the sky and see what was happening to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, I'm not aware that they were using drones, but that
I haven't
seen the operations.
And does your agency have drones?
We do maintain some drones.
So if Secret Service would have requested your agency to fly drones that day, you would have been able to do so. Is that correct?
We would have endeavored to try to honor that request. Yes, sir.
And you testify that you've been to the scene of the shooting. Did you see the water tower that's located approximately 100 yards from the building where the shooter fired those shots?
I did see it, sir.
And would it have been possible to have put an officer, and again, that's not your responsibility to do that, that's the Secret Service's, but would it have been possible to put an officer there looking down on the scene of the rally and the building where the shooter occurred? Would that have been something that would have been possible to do?
Presuming that there's a way to access the water tower. I didn't walk over. I was probably several hundred yards away, so I can't say that I could.
And if you had an officer up there, that would have provided you a strategic viewpoint of the events that were transpiring below, correct?
I would agree. Tactics, height gives a tactical advantage. Yes, sir.
And then I want to ask you also about the roof where the shooter was located. You said you didn't go on the roof, but you viewed the roof. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The Secret Service director, prior to her resignation, said that she did not put anybody on the roof because it had a sloped roof that would have created a safety concern. I was in Butler, Pennsylvania yesterday with many members of this committee. My fellow member, Carlos Jimenez, who is 70 years old, and I guess he doesn't mind me saying that since he has put that information out there. There's video of him easily traversing the roof, walking across the roof, and even though he is some 50 years older than the shooter. And so my question is, do you agree with the assessment of the former Secret Service director that the roof was so sloped that it created safety concerns?
I can't agree with that statement, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm out of time and I yield back.
So I just got to say, I loved it when Congressman Guest referred to his colleague and mentioned that a 70-year-old man stood on that roof just fine. Paris also mentioned in that exchange that he has been unable to get cooperation from the Secret Service. Why is that? Ask yourself that. What are they trying to hide? They won't even cooperate with the state police in the state where this occurred. That's troublesome. And how about when he said there were no drones requested? I mean, around here, even when a pet runs away from a home, people call drone companies to help with the search. And you heard him. Had the Secret Service requested drones, the state police would have honored that request. I mean, drones should have been automatic. If they would have had drones flying, the whole thing's avoided, right? He also mentions that water tower and the fact that no officer was on it. He will not be the only one to bring that up. More on that later in this podcast. Now, during the hearing, Paris also discussed the walkthrough prior to the event of that AGR building, which is the building that Crooks was on the roof of and firing from, and specifically who was in charge of securing that building. And it's pretty interesting what he said, and here's what that sounded like.
The final walkthrough occurred on the 11th. Present at that meeting were the two commanders that were tasked with both staffing security checkpoints on the interior of the secure perimeter, as well as the commander who was going to be in charge of the motorcade. But in addition to that, a PSP area commander was on that walkthrough, holding the rank of major.
Could you share a little bit of insight? I appreciate the timeline, but could you share a little bit, because I only have about a minute.
I apologize.
Yeah, the specific to the AGR building.
So on that walkthrough, our area commander asked specifically who was responsible for the AGR building, and we were told that Butler ESU was responsible for that area by several Secret Service agents on that walkthrough.
All right. One last quick question. Real quick, I mean, I'll let you comment about it. The slope of the roof, would that have prevented a sniper from being up there?
I don't believe so, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Now, it's his testimony right there that the Butler police were placed in charge of that building by the Secret Service. And not only did he say that, he also said something very concerning when that exchange was followed up with this exchange from Congressman Bishop. Listen to this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Paris, are you aware whether any law enforcement officer or officers was or were posted in the second floor window of the AGR building?
I am aware, yes, sir.
And what is the answer?
To my knowledge, there were two posted there from Butler ESU.
And you said Butler ESU. What does the acronym ESU stand for?
Emergency Services Unit. It's a team that's comprised of multiple agencies that pool resources on a county or several county basis in order to enhance capabilities and training and be able to respond. Basically, a mutual aid agreement is my understanding of it.
Is it sort of like a SWAT team?
They are trained in SWAT tactics, to my knowledge.
So
yes.
how many ESU officers were posted to that second floor window?
So I am aware that two were in the building, but again, I have not seen the Secret Service operations plan.
Do you know, well, you say in the building. Were they in a window, a window out onto the scene?
From briefings that I have been given, I was told they were in a window, yes, sir.
Did they remain on post?
I was told that at a certain point, they began searching along with other local officers in the immediacy after Crooks had been identified as suspicious by them.
By them?
My understanding is that they identified Crooks for not matriculating. He never, to my knowledge, Crooks never made it through the secure perimeter into the venue space itself. He was identified by those members as suspicious in part because of that. And then at some point, he produced the rangefinder, which heightened that suspicion.
So Representative Crane took a video on site yesterday. I'd like staff to put that up. It's just very short. There's a few seconds. They can do that. If I understand correctly, this is from the second story window of the AGR building. You can see that window comes out from the sash and swings out to the right. There's an aerial photo right after Crooks was killed, where Crooks's body's on the roof, and that window was open. Was it from this vantage point that those ESU officers spotted Crooks?
I don't know that particular window, but my understanding is from a second-story window is where he was initially spotted.
Okay. So and are you then saying that, to your knowledge, those ESU officers left the location where they could look out the window to go in search of this person?
That is my understanding.
Sometime before the time between the time he was spotted on the ground and identified as someone suspicious until the shooting, they had left that post to go look for him. Is that what you're saying?
My understanding is yes, along with other municipal officers that responded to that area. And that's based on interviews that we've conducted, and I want to be very clear that I don't want to establish a timeline minute by minute because we don't have that yet.
I think that's revelatory. I haven't heard that information. I did hear before that and there's a local news station. Well, there's a local news station report from July 17 that says that local law enforcement were told they couldn't be responsible for securing the AGR building during the Trump rally. And of course, you've testified a moment ago or earlier in this hearing that it was your understanding that the meeting with the Secret Service on on the site was that ESU was going to handle the AGR building. Which is it? Do you know?
My understanding is what my initial answer was.
Okay. You also, in response to Mr. McCall, you started to say something. You were saying that you did have integrated comms, and you were saying you were deferring to the ongoing investigation, but you have an understanding of the sequence, and then he cut you off and went on to another question. Do you know what you were about to say? Do you remember that?
Just that we had members of PSP inside of the Secret Service command post, and we were maintaining communication with our people.
Had ESU maintained position in that window overlooking the roof, isn't it true that they would have had a clean shot at at Mr. Crooks as he was ascending the roof to his shooting position?
I'm not prepared to say that because I don't know the exact timeline of events.
But it's your understanding, though, that they were no longer in that room where they had been previously overlooking the building at the time he was ascending the roof. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that question?
The ESU officers were no longer in that room where they could look out the window and oversee the roof as that video shows.
I believe they were actively searching along with additional municipal officers for Mr. Crooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Y'all, that's a huge deal. You never leave your post. The thought here is that had those two snipers not left their post, they may have seen Crooks scaling that roof or even walking on the roof or heard him walking on the roof, and the whole thing could have been avoided. Rather than just staying put and just radioing Crooks' position, he says they left to go look for Crooks. That's really bad. Now, before we move on, I want to make you aware of the shitstorm that particular exchange created. The day after this testimony, the Butler County DA comes out, and he comes out in defense of those two snipers, those two local police snipers in that building, and he basically says Paris was full of shit. And the article read like this. The Butler County District Attorney is sticking up for two local snipers who were inside the building facing the roof where Thomas Matthew Crooks carried out the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. Butler County DA Richard Goldinger refuted some of the Pennsylvania State Police Colonel Christopher Paris' testimony during Tuesday's congressional hearing on Capitol Hill. In a letter on Wednesday, Goldinger defended the two Butler County Emergency Service Unit snipers who were reported to have left their assigned building at the AGR complex during the rally. In the letter, Goldinger said, to say these officers left their posts is a misstatement. I love how he put that. Not a lie, it's a misstatement. They performed their duties to which they were assigned. Goldinger said only one of the snipers left the building briefly to chase the shooter after he was spotted. When he could not find him, he returned to the building. For clarification, neither officer left their post, as was testified at the hearing on July 13th. Their post was the building, Goldinger wrote in the letter. Paris was told the two local snipers positioned at the second floor windows overlooking the roof took a photo of the shooter and circulated it before leaving the area to look for him on the ground. But the state police, they stand behind that testimony. Pennsylvania State Police spokesman Adam Reed defended Paris's testimony, saying our agency stands by yesterday's testimony. The investigation into the shooting and its aftermath continued. Goldinger also claims the snipers who were posted inside the building wouldn't have been able to see the shooter from where they were from, that those two local snipers were told to watch the crowd and the stage. The contradictions come amid a whistleblower claim that police were supposed to be on the roof but went inside because it was hot outside. Members of Congress who toured the site in Butler Township said they were told heat was the issue. Houston, we got a problem. Somebody's lying, either the state police or the DA. Both things can't be true, right? Well, the DA also did a video interview with News Nation, and here's a short clip where he says, in his own words, that essentially Colonel Paris is lying.
The Pennsylvania State Police Colonel, he testified yesterday and said that they left.
Right, he's wrong.
He's wrong about that.
He's wrong about that.
Because he said that when they spotted him, that they left to go look for him, and that's why the roof wasn't covered.
No, that's not true. They stayed where they were. They could not see where he was located when he was on the roof. Their vantage point was they would literally had to have been leaning out the window looking over to where he was located. But they were still where they were supposed to be. And they couldn't find him. He had walked around the building and they had called it in. So they didn't leave their posts. I don't know why he said that. But
I mean, that was a pretty serious thing to say to Congress.
Well, yeah, it was. And I'm not saying he wasn't telling it. I mean, maybe he was told that and that's what he believes happened. But that's not what happened. They did not leave. They just couldn't see where he was from where they were. The vantage point did not permit them to see where he was shooting from.
Now, as I said, you've got conflicting stories here from these two guys, and that's an issue. Remember this, y'all. The truth never changes. We just got to get to it. So back to the hearing, and one of the biggest surprises for me came in response to the time frame Paris said transpired between when the officer confronted Crooks on that roof and when those first shots were fired. Here's a clip, and then we're going to talk about it.
Do you know how long it was between the time that the photograph was relayed to the Secret Service and the time when the officer was trying to hoist himself onto the roof?
So that's a critical, detailed, salient question. I would answer it from the reverse time period, from if the first shots rang out at 1811 hours. The hoisting up of the officer occurred probably no more. Again, I'm going to give you a time, but I want to just put it.
We understand it's not specific.
Of a sequence of events. I would say at most 2.5 to 3 minutes before that first shot. Right.
And when
they were notified in the interim, it still remains under investigation.
Right. And when he fell off of he let go.
The municipal officer, when the briefing that I had was the municipal officer saw Crooks saw him, and Crooks turned and leveled the gun at him in a position tactically of extreme disadvantage, suspended, in the air with your legs dangling after somebody had boosted you up.
And he let go, right?
He let go and he fell back down.
And was there at that point any communications that there's a shooter on the roof from the municipal officers who were there?
That's all part of the after action. We're just trying to get a sequence of events up to the point when Crooks then fired the weapon. So that's been the focus of our investigation.
But there was at least, you said you thought 2.5 to 3 minutes between the time when the municipal officers tried to hoist on top of the roof, Crooks pointed the gun at them, they dropped, and then between that time and when he fired the shots.
I don't want to give you an exact period of time, but it was minutes. It was a very short period of time, even for his ability.
But not seconds.
I would say minutes, but I can't. I would be remiss if I gave you, and I want to be very clear on the record. When you do an investigation like this, the timeline is critical. You're asking me. I was briefed. I'm answering to the best of my ability right now.
And I know my time is up.
Later on, he apparently realized his slip up and he walked it back. In that clip I just played you, he said 2.5 to 3 minutes from Crooks' discovery on that roof from an officer to when those first shots rang out. Then he walks that back later on, and I didn't play you that, but I'll tell you about it. And he said he intended to say Crooks was on the roof about 3 minutes, but the shots were fired only seconds after Crooks was spotted by the officer who Crooks pointed the gun at. This is huge because had he stuck to that 3-minute time frame, it would have been undeniable proof of a government conspiracy. Did he realize that and change his story to kind of cover himself? Remember what I said. The truth never changes. What do you think? So obviously, regardless of where you stand, the massive communication breakdown is just startling. You got the Secret Service, the Pennsylvania State Police, the Butler Police, and nobody knows what the other is doing or what they're supposed to be doing or who's in charge of what. Check out this exchange where that very subject of the lack of communication is brought up.
Colonel Paris, typically these events, do they typically have two control rooms or two sort of tactical operations areas where the Secret Service is in their sort of spot and the local law enforcement is in their sort of command center? Is that how it's typically done?
I would say from my experience and from state police operations, to include this event as planned in our operations plan, we had integrated communications by having our PSP personnel in the Secret Service command post.
So your person was in there in that command post on this event?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if the local sheriff had anybody or the deputies that were also provided, the local guys?
I would be remiss at this point to say I knew an exact listing of everyone in that command post.
The sheriff yesterday told us he did not. Would you expect him to have had somebody there?
So I would say generally, there's a lot of talk about interoperability and communications. The state police, for example, operate our own statewide radio network. So we have the ability to, if we have an incident, a long protracted incident, for example, where we need to patch other agencies in, we have the capability to do that. However, Secret Service, for example, maintains some additional encrypted communications. So the best way to integrate unified command
is physically present in the
correct,
command
that
site.
Would be our,
yeah, that's how the Army does it in the military.
I would expect our commanders to have personnel in there so that we could have radio communication as well as a redundancy in the operations plan with a telephonic backup.
Do you know if in this particular case, I mean, normally they sweep these sites with dogs. Was a K-9 team used here for this event?
I do not know. I have not seen the Secret Service operations plan. I've asked for it. I've yet to receive it. I did double check. That was something that PSP could typically offer to the Secret Service if they requested it. And I did verify that in this event, we did not provide any dogs.
Okay. As I understand it, there wasn't one, but you'd expect one in a situation like this.
So I want to be clear that when the Secret Service interfaces with the state police for whatever protectee and level of protection they're endeavoring to provide, the Secret Service is the lead agency. So as per the earlier statement of 18,000 law enforcement agencies across the United States, it would be very difficult, I would assert, for the Secret Service to operate all across the United States and have each individual agency telling the Secret Service how the operation should be run. They're the lead agency. If that was something that their protocols called for during the initial meeting when preliminary steps and agencies were brought together, that would be something that would be discussed typically.
The AGR building, did your guys on the ground there ever voice concerns to the Secret Service for not putting somebody on that building?
So I suppose the best sequence of events that I can give you is that PSP was notified by email on July 5th about this event. There was an initial planning meeting where we had commanders present on Monday, July 8th. So over Tuesday the 9th and Wednesday the 10th, those commanders that we designated, basically our orders are from the front office, my team on down. You know, we work collaboratively with the Secret Service, collaborate, give them what we can. The final walkthrough occurred on the 11th. Present at that meeting were the two commanders that were tasked with both staffing the security checkpoints on the interior of the secure perimeter, as well as the commander who was going to be in charge of the motorcade. But in addition to that, a PSP area commander was on that walkthrough, holding the rank of major.
Could you share a little bit of insight? I appreciate the timeline, but could you share a little bit, because I only have about a minute.
I apologize.
Yeah, the specific to the AGR building.
So on that walkthrough, our area commander asked specifically who was responsible for the AGR building, and we were told that Butler ESU was responsible for that area by several Secret Service agents on that walkthrough.
So there you have it. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she focused on the pictures that were circulating amongst police prior to the shooting. Remember, those police were taking pictures of crooks with their cell phones. And the state police colonel, he seemed really nervous when he was answering these, in my view. As a matter of fact, he starts invoking legal issues when answering these questions. Here are those exchanges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Paris, I'd like to carry the dialogue on about the specific timeline. I have a timeline that was given to us on the Oversight Committee yesterday when we questioned former Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle, as she has resigned today. But the timeline that I'd like to talk to you about is exactly what you were just discussing here. 18 minutes before President Trump took the stage, it was at 5:45 that the Butler County Emergency Services noticed Thomas Crooks on the roof, took a picture, and reported it. You stated just a few minutes before in your testimony that police or PSP were given a phone number to the Secret Service and that Butler County Emergency Services texted or sent the picture. Was that a text? Was that a digital platform? Was it an email? How did they send the picture?
So just to be clear, at that period of time, at 1845, I don't believe the testimony was
5:45 p.m.
5:45 p.m. Yes, ma'am. He was not up on the roof at that point, is my belief.
No. Emergency Services noticed Thomas Crooks on the roof. This is the timeline that we have. Took a picture and reported it. Who did they send that picture to?
Just to be clear, they were posted in the AGR building and took a picture of him. That's what you're.
Yes. Who did they send the picture to?
So I only know from interviews what I can confirm to my knowledge and belief here today that a member of Pennsylvania State Police inside of the command post received that information telephonically and by text, related to the Secret Service, and then was given a number to follow up on. And that was based, again, heightened suspicion.
How did they relay it to Secret Service?
I believe that they verbally turned and said in the command post, this is information that I just received. And then in follow up to that, as directed from the interview that I was briefed on, that was forwarded by text as requested by the Secret Service.
Can you give us copies of that communication and that phone number that was given to them for Secret Service?
So that's part of the ongoing investigation, and I would defer to the legality of.
Can you find that information and provide it to our committee?
I will look to see if legally I will consult Chief Counsel within the State Police, but it is an ongoing criminal investigation at this point.
So after it was reported, President Trump took the stage at 6:03 p.m. All of this took place. This was 18 minutes before President Trump actually took the stage at 6:03 p.m. President Trump was shot in the face at 6:11 p.m. This has all been reported. These timelines. Why do you not have a timeline?
Because it's not the timeline is going to be critical for the after action report. Obviously, we're conducting an investigation with the FBI. We have been deferential to the FBI in terms of what has been released to the media. I was present for one press briefing on the night of Saturday night, July 13th, and we've been deferential to the FBI on that. So I would refer you to the FBI. The timelines that you're quoting, I just want to be clear on the record. To my knowledge and belief, I don't have a minute-by-minute timeline. I've had multiple briefings about what these interviews have gleaned, but they're from the perspective of PSP investigating the homicide and the 2 attempted homicides.
Thank you, Colonel. During the event, at what point in the day was someone from your team first made aware that there was a potential suspicious person or possible threat?
So based on my knowledge and belief, that information relayed to the command post from Butler ESU in terms of Crooks was the first time that I'm aware of. Again, keeping in mind, I've heard estimates that there were 13,000 people there. There were multiple people identified as suspicious, several that were identified in that area.
Yes, thank you. Now, you stated before in your questions that you haven't seen an operation plan, but didn't your team participate, and why haven't you seen the plan?
So as my answer prior on the record, I've asked for it. The state police has asked for it. We have yet to receive it. And my understanding is that our walkthrough with our commanders and our area commander was to delineate what our responsibilities were, and we endeavored to fulfill those responsibilities.
Who was the Secret Service agent in charge of the advance team?
I don't know the name of the agent.
How was PSP supposed to communicate with Secret Service on the advance team?
You mean in the planning leading up to it? So my understanding is, as is typical, we're notified. We were notified by email on July 5th. The meeting on July 8th, Monday, was to get all of those partners together to exchange information, how they could communicate with one another, and then the planning took place from there.
Could you provide our committee a copy of all those communications, Colonel Paris?
So I will check with our legal counsel. I mean, Pennsylvania has multiple state statutes that cover investigative plans or law enforcement sensitive information.
And as you heard, he also did not want to answer any questions as relates to the timeline. And that's concerning, y'all, especially considering the prior day featured the director of the Secret Service refusing that same question. Why is the timeline so hard to discuss? Ask yourself that. So this brings me to Congressman Eli Crane, who had maybe the most insightful exchange of the day with Colonel Chris Paris. And if you are unfamiliar with who Congressman Eli Crane is, he's a congressman from Arizona, and let me read you his bio real quick. A week after the September 11th attacks, Representative Eli Crane left college during his senior year at the University of Arizona to enlist in the United States Navy. During his 13 years in military service, he participated in 5 wartime deployments, serving 3 of those deployments with SEAL Team 3. In 2012, Representative Crane and his wife Jen co-founded a veteran-owned and operated small business that manufactures bottle openers made from shell casings, a venture that started in his garage. The business grew to employ dozens and led to a successfully negotiated deal, which was televised nationally. They sold that company in 2022. Eli and Jen live in Arizona with their 2 daughters, Mackenzie and Kennedy. Navy SEAL, y'all. And what's that mean? Well, other than he's a certified badass, it also means he knows what the fuck he's talking about when it comes to that committee touring the site of the shooting. He's just going to flat out see things when he went on that site that only people with his level of training would see. You got to hear this exchange.
All right, Colonel Paris, did you notice when you showed up on site what the tallest structure on the site was?
I can't say at the moment that I arrived that I did, no, sir.
Okay. Now that you've had a chance to go back and look over it, what is the tallest structure on that site?
The water tower, sir.
Absolutely. Colonel, do you know how far the water tower was from the roof where the shooter took his shots?
I do not.
160 yards, sir. Who made the decision, Colonel, not to put a counter-sniper team on the tallest structure by far on the site with 360-degree surveillance? Do you have any idea?
I do not know, sir.
Okay, we'd like to get that answer. Did you see the video that showed me sticking my phone out the second-story window? Did you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, exposing the coverage of the window of the entire roof. Are you aware that local law enforcement and Secret Service had full access to that building in that room?
My understanding is that they did.
Yeah. Why weren't security teams, sir, on site able to spot a 20-year-old kid with zero camouflage crawling up a white roof with an AR-15 that several rally goers were screaming and yelling and pointing out, and they noticed him, and they weren't even there to conduct security. They were there to watch the president. Do you have any idea why the security teams couldn't find that guy?
I do not, sir.
Would the gentleman yield for just
Yes,
a second
yes,
on
sir.
that? So just for clarification, it was the ESU guys that were manning those buildings?
Yep.
And they left because of the call of the suspicious person. So they left their post there to go look for him. They're the same individuals who attempted to climb up the building and were scared away by the shooter pointing the gun, right?
I reclaim my time. Thank you.
Okay,
I'm
that's
just
fine.
wondering why they weren't able to find him, because even while they were looking, they could have still looked out that window that they had access to. All right, Colonel Paris, I'm just going to say it. Are you aware, sir, that many Americans believe this was very likely not a lone shooter, but a coordinated assassination attempt? Have you been getting those messages from people like I have?
I have not, sir.
You haven't? Well, there's a lot of people in this room that have been getting the same messages. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that a lot of Americans are like, this doesn't add up, this doesn't make sense, guys? How could this many things have gone wrong, right? Like the things I pointed out, a 20-year-old kid, got 150 yards of the President of the United States with an AR-15, flew a drone to conduct site surveillance, was spotted with a rangefinder ranging targets, then lost, had advanced explosive devices on him with no military training. Nobody was placed in the most obvious spot to conduct counter-sniper operations. I was a sniper in the SEAL teams, Colonel. As soon as I got out of the SUV and I saw that that water tower, I was like, that's exactly where I'd be. Put me right there. So obvious. After partisan attempts to bankrupt him, imprison him for 750 years, and countless depictions as a modern-day Hitler, are you surprised, sir, that a lot of Americans are like, maybe there's more to this story?
I wouldn't begin to speculate about what the American people think, sir.
Colonel, did your team make entry and conduct investigation at the suspect's home prior to this shooting?
Excuse me, sir? I asked that question.
Did your team make entry and conduct any investigation at the suspect's home?
I believe we had people that participated in that securing of it. There were bomb assets that we provided.
Mr. Chairman, can I have 30 more seconds?
Yeah, I'm letting everybody kind of go.
Okay.
On the night of. Since then, none.
Did you get any reports from any of your agents of anything fishy at the home?
I was briefed on.
Was there any silverware found in the home or trash?
I have nothing in the briefing that I was given, sir.
Was it extremely clean, almost like a medical lab? Were you given any of those reports?
I was not giving any of those details, sir.
Okay, that's what I'm hearing. Interesting. The last thing I want to enter into the record, Mr. Chairman, this is article, opinion from, I believe, the Washington Post by Robert Kagan. A Trump dictatorship is increasingly inevitable. We should stop pretending. This article compares Trump to Caesar and attempts to justify the assassination of President Trump. And I think even though we want to dodge around it and not make this partisan, I think we all know that a lot of this has to do with the rhetoric, the very violent rhetoric that has led up to this. Thank you. I yield back.
So there's that water tower again. He's really focused on it because, y'all, this guy was a trained Navy SEAL sniper. He knows how obvious that should have been, even for someone with far less training. You always look for the highest point. You want the high ground over your enemy. That's military tactics 101. And I thought his other questions were also dead on and direct. And he asked the best question of the day to me. And you may be learning this for the first time, but it was in relation to the state of the Crooks family home. Now, you heard him. There was no trash, no silverware, and it was so clean, it looked like a medical lab. WTF. That's all I can say. Now, I'm just scratching the surface of what we are discovering. In the next episode, I'm going to cover day 3 of this hearing, and that was the first time we actually hear from the agency investigating this case. The head of the FBI, Director Christopher Wray, testifies. But I want you to hear this last clip for today. This was released just a day from this recording and was released by Senator Chuck Grassley. It's from the helmet cam of one of those guys in fatigues you saw guarding the Secret Service as they were laying on Trump after the shooting. And just minutes had transpired from the attempted assassination. He is seen talking to a Secret Service agent in a suit. The guy looks like one of the men from Men in Black, honestly, on the top of that roof. You can even see Crooks behind them. He's dead and he's pixelated out, but you can see the body there. And it really shows the confusion immediately following this event. And I think you're going to find this interesting. Here's what that sounded like.
So we don't know.
So this is the guy that
yes, that they sent
saw?
yes, Beaver County sniper seen and sent the pictures out. This is him.
Okay, all right.
Rifle's right there, obviously.
Got it. So the bike in the back, is he on that bike?
We don't know.
We don't know. So
I
we're
don't
just
know.
treating that as suspicious device.
Oh, one second. I believe the sniper that seen these and sent the pictures is right inside this building. Michelle, is Greg in there? All right, so if you go to that window that's open and yell for Greg, that's the sniper that sent the original pictures and seen him come from the bike and set the book back down and then lost sight of him.
Okay.
He's the one that sent the pictures out. I don't know if you got the same ones I did.
I think I did, yeah. He's like got his glasses on and he's...
So we had the picture of that.
I got that
okay, and then this is his bike with the stuff. And our sniper seen him walking away from that, I believe.
Okay.
But he would be right inside that window. He's the one that physically seen this, sent the pictures, and called it out.
Okay, so, and we have somebody detained, correct?
That I don't know.
People detained on this side. Right. Our guy that was just up here told me that there's a guy detained who's the owner of the bike. And I said, no, that's the owner of the bike.
Yeah, basically, when I got
we've been up here, so we wouldn't know that information.
We just hauled ass. We got over here.
Got it.
We hopped up over
here. That's no problem. Is that all your stuff?
That was one of our
Yeah, so someone came up looking to treat him and
Yes.
Okay.
Copy. Gas is off to the building, just so you know.
Thank you.
had some.
Yeah, they do. I talked to the guy. They were those people detained were filming.
The American Water was notified. They authorized.
Maybe they were involved. Maybe they weren't.
Will start somebody.
Other than that, I haven't heard anybody.
Well, I think it's. The guys that saw them filming were like, oh, they were filming us, and then filming the guy up on the roof, and then filming us, and then when shots started firing, they like tried to run away. It was like, isn't that what everybody would do that have a phone? You know, I'm not saying they weren't involved, but you know what I mean? Like that.
It's up in the air right now, right?
Right. So I got no problem detaining them. Again, I'm just trying to detain those guys, find out what they know, who they are, whatever. I'm trying to get clear information to relay back to DC.
Bring control for the water tower.
We have one shooter deceased. I think we have 3 victims in the crowd. Is that, did you guys hear that too?
That I'm not sure.
So I heard 1 deceased, 2 white flighted.
I know 2 helicopters did take off.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know how many.
Well,
I'm going to let you think about that one until the next episode of Becoming 47. And thank you so much for listening to Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.